So all of that leads us into this concept that drives food forest. The design of food forest is trying to mimic the natural succession of a forest, okay? So natural succession is described as the ecological succession of trees. How is a forest developed over time? And this is sped up by forest ecosystems. So when we develop our forest, our designer forest, we have to understand it starts to develop an ecosystem. There's animals and insects and all the things that live in that forest. So we have to see it as a whole. And if we do that, it'll build fertile soil, and that's why we don't need to add fertilization or water to our food forest. It does it by itself. It's an ecosystem unto itself. And we do that by working with nitrogen-fixing plants and building fungal relationships in the soil. So this is the natural succession of a forest. Imagine that it's Hawaii. Hawaii just had their volcanic activity. So some people's houses have actually burned down in the last couple weeks, guys, if you didn't know. And so now that's just bare rock. Bacteria will start to attach itself to the bare rock and form. And then at that point, that's our bare ground. That'll create enough nutrient cycling for weeds, which here we can see in grasslands or fernlands are weeds. That'll move into the shrublands or the second successional grasses. That's where we kind of see our vegetables. Then we can move into the forest and mature forest. So by understanding this succession over time, we can design a forest to increase the speed. So this may naturally take, to get to a mature forest, a closed canopy, that may naturally take 20 to 50 years. But I can close the canopy here in 5 years. So instead of having to wait for that to happen, we can do it. And we need to do this around the world because we've cut down forest around the world to put in monoculture agriculture, right? So when we do that, we take out the forest, which is a big ecosystem, and we put in one plant. So now that we have all of this degraded lands around the world, we could look at a system to try to put that back into and speed up the succession to get a more forest system back in. So we can change the way that we eat foods or our relationship to annual foods. So if we do all that, this is a discussion on, do we have to maintain our food forest? Remember I described that in my garden, I may have to pick weeds, I need to do all these things, right? Well, there's a great book by a gentleman named Masahito Fukuoka, and he describes it this way. Because the food forest mimics a natural forest ecosystem's succession, the maintenance level of the food forest is going to be potentially very low. Meaning, if it's natural, if I design it to be natural, I don't need to do very much. I don't have to go into a natural forest and maintain it. It's just a forest, right? I can walk in it, I can enjoy it, but I don't have to go around pruning things. The ecosystem of the food forest comes very close to the idea of do-nothing farming. Okay? Permaculture, one of the major references that they call upon is this book, The Natural Way of Farming. I highly recommend it. It's a very small book. If you like more like Japanese mindset or poetry, it's a really great book. So this is a quote by Masahito. The ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and the perfection of human beings. Meaning that when we have aspect of a garden, we have something we can take care of. For you guys, did you enjoy planting that young tree? Felt good. Growing things feels good. I think in all humans, it's a natural thing. That's that Garden of Eden concept that comes. We used to go around, we maintained the Garden of Eden, which was basically the earth. We maintained the earth. What's maybe our place. But we've kind of fall off of that because lots of us grow up in a city now, don't know where anything comes from, never gets a chance to grow anything, right? They ask kids now, where's milk come from? And they say a box. Okay, I guess so. Comes out of a box. I don't know that's where it came from though. So they don't have a relationship with their food. So this gives us back more empowerment to develop a relationship with where our foods come from. So that's from that book. So Masahito describes it as, we can learn from nature. You can create a system that's self-supporting, self-maintaining, self-balancing, and self-nourishing. So it takes care of all of its needs. I'm just placing the elements in the right place. And for the food forest ecosystem, this means do not hoe, weed, use pesticides or insecticides, even if you say they're organic, and do not irrigate and do not use manures. Well, this is kind of weird because the first part of the whole course, everything that I taught you, right? I just said don't do it. I taught you gardening. I taught you organic gardening. So you see, in organic gardening, we have to do all these things. But in the food forest, we don't. So if you want to get food, grow your own food, which one would be easier? Kind of ask this question. Why are we, and this is what Masayoshi Fukuoka's book was about, the premise of why do we spend so much labor to grow our food when things grow naturally all the time? I don't really have to do very much. So this is this aspect. It's like people or humans liking to work for work's sake. We just do that on purpose, okay? So the mantra, you do not need this in a natural forest, so you do not need this in a food forest. So in a natural forest, you don't have to do it. Why should I have to do it in my food forest? So don't create work. Don't make up work. Don't just go do something unless you get something in return. So a final remark from the book by Robert J. Hart. Obviously, few of us are in a position to restore actual real forest. But tens of millions of us have gardens or access to public land where trees can be planted and new city forests can arise. So he starts to ask the question, and this drives this new concept in permaculture of urban gardening. If I can actually garden in an urban situation, why do we have cities and we cut down all the trees? Why don't we create a garden in the city? Right? Why are we not doing that? Why is our city not in the garden? Why don't we see everything around us as a garden? Why do we have the affiliation to take our vegetables and put them in this little space and control them in this little weird way and create lots of work in order to get yield? Where did that derive from? Because we buy a gardening book, the 101 Ways to Garden, and then we read it and it says that's what you do, so that's what I do, right? But in nature, it doesn't work that way. So we want to look back more to nature as our teacher. Want to see how these plants develop naturally, put them back in their natural place, and I will be able to do less work.